Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. That was a really upbeat anyways, hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing really well. It is a gorgeous Wednesday. I'm a little bit weather obsessed. I don't know if this is like a Sydney thing. If you're from Sydney, I'd love to know, but I feel like Sydney people, we need sun. If it's not sunny, and it's especially if it's raining, that's it. Cancel everything. Cancel any plans you had of going outside. Even if you're staying inside, cancel everything. Like, I don't know if it's a Sydney thing. I feel like I'm such a Sydney person. If it rains, mood destroyed. I don't know. But it's sunny and it's warm and I'm so happy. Okay, I'm not gonna ramble on too much, but we're doing a little TBR video because I think I said this in my last TBR. It was like my spring TBR video. I just sit down every couple months and I will like do a little search on the interwebs to like see what I want to feel like reading for the next bit. I don't do this every month because I don't got time for that. And yeah, or if I enter like into a new era, like into a new obsession, and I want to find books that are very specific to that, then I'll also do a TBR. But yeah, that's kind of what happened. I'm currently reading Flower Heart by Catherine Bakewell, and that's kind of like a summery witch vibe. It's like a witchy read, and it got me really obsessed with reading more witchy kind of books. So that's kind of where this TBR is starting off. So the first book, I just have it on my phone so that I have a little reference, but I'll put the picture up. The first book that I found and I'm like really wanting to read is A Resistance of Witches by Morgan Ryan. The idea of this book is so intriguing. It's very like tied very closely with historical fiction, and I feel like that's a theme with some of these books. There's something about being set in like the 1800s or early 1900s that is drawing me in. So basically this book, from what I gathered with the synopsis, is basically our main character is part of a witch academy, and it's set in the midst of World War II. So Nazis, they're up there, they're raging, they're destroying everything. And her mission is to basically go on this quest to find this book before it can land in the Nazis' hand. They've kind of already infiltrated the academy and there's already a lot of loss of life and everything. So her mission is to retrieve this book. I'm not describing it very well and I'm not hyping it up, but it sounds so good. I'll just read the like first line. It says, a historical fantasy debut set against the backdrop of World War II, where a witch journeys to find a book of unspeakable power before it lands in Nazis' hands. So yeah, that's what it is. It's giving, what's that book called? The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. It feels like it's going to be that similar tone. It feels like we're in this historical period, but we're going through it in a sort of fantastical lens. With witches, obviously, and that's so fun. I have a thing where I love historical fiction with fantasy. I think it's one of the best combos. It almost, I feel like, it sort of takes the pressure off the author to build a whole new world from scratch because they can leverage a real time, historically speaking, like a real time period in history. And I think the fact that this is to do with World War II and Nazis, I feel like it's pretty familiar for most people. And so this is why I always say sometimes with Harry Potter and stuff, it feels quite believable because we're still set in the real world. We're just exploring it in a completely different like view, you know? Something about the real world being the backdrop I think helps, and I always feel like the stakes are a little bit lower, you know, it feels a bit more believable. The author doesn't have to do too much work for me to believe in it, you know. But yeah, I'm very excited. I'm excited to read about this Royal Academy of Witches. Yeah, so I'm very excited. So that's my first thing on my TBR. That's my first book on my TBR. And now we're going a little bit rogue. I have seen this huge trend like over the past couple of years of sirens and like romantasy books revolving around sirens. And I have loved this concept, but for some weird reason, I've never picked up a siren book. What was the most popular one? Oh, I'll put it on the screen if I remember. But this particular book I've seen everywhere. It was so popular. And I was like, I'm going to read that book. I'm going to read it. I've never read it. I don't know why. I think it even has a sequel, or it's like a duology or something. I've never read it, but I love the idea of sirens. But I haven't really read it. Anyways, this next book drew me in. First of all, the cover, chef's kiss. I think covers, this is a little bit of a tangent, but something about covers I feel like are not discussed enough, because I do think a beautifully illustrated cover really helps with imagining the book and what's happening in the book. So I think fantasy books are getting on that, and the covers are getting way more elaborate and just beautifully illustrated. But anyways, the next book I have not introduced at all is called When the Tides Held the Moon by Vanessa Vita Kelly. Okay, so this book is about, we've got a main character called Benny. He is a blacksmith working in New York City, early 1910s, and he is tasked with making this like glass enclosure thing on wheels. And he's like, okay, like, sure. And he basically gets roped into making this. He basically gets roped into working for this, I'm gonna just describe it simply, like a circus act. Like there is a team, they have lots of acts in it, and he's essentially been tasked to make this cage for a siren that they are going to catch and capture and keep in this glass enclosure for the circus act. And he gets introduced to this siren, and yeah, you can guess what happens from there. I've not heard of this book, but the plot and the idea, the characters, they drew me in. And yeah, it just seems like such a little bit of a different take on the siren tale. No pun intended. But yeah, oh, and I think it's like a merman. It's not a woman. Is it called a siren in this book? Maybe it's just a merman. Anyways, there's a friendship that develops between our main character, who's the blacksmith, Benny, and then the merman that they capture. So yes, very, very excited. It's so rogue for me, but I feel like I'm gonna really like it. But yeah, so that's my second pick. Okay, moving on to my next pick. This one's a little random, but as I said, I think with these books, I was just looking for books that were super out there, a little bit different, something I would not normally pick up. And I came across this book called I Am Lilith by Melanie Duffy. And the concept around Lilith has always intrigued me. I think ever since I read about her as a character in like Mortal Instruments, I've loved the concept of Lilith. I don't know why. She's just such an intriguing character for me. There's a bit of tension between the male. So it's like a female-ruled society, and it's assuming there's a bit of a revolution happening where the men are rising up and leading a revolt. And I think Lilith as a high priestess is having to deal with this. And I think it goes into sort of her personal life and her friendships. And it's just such an interesting concept. It's a bit like a mythological fantasy. The vibes I'm getting is this is a society where females rule. Everything to do with a female is to be worshipped. And I think there is tension brewing with the men in society. And I think that's the main core plot that Lilith has to deal with as high priestess. So yeah, I'm very excited. That seems so interesting. Nothing like I've ever read before. As I said, I've always been intrigued by Lilith as a character, but I've only read about her probably in Mortal Instruments, and that's it. So when I came across this book, I was like, sign me up. I need to get this book. It seems so interesting. Okay, am I playing? Hopefully you guys can hear, I don't know if you can hear the cicadas in the background, and hopefully it's not too distracting, but we're moving on to the fourth book, which is The Witchstone. I actually heard this book on Carrie Can Read on her channel, and when she described this book, it pulled me in so much. It really reminds me of Lucifer, the show. So if you don't know, the Witchstone follows a demon. He's like a young demon, and he is tasked with basically bringing suffering to this one particular family. And essentially he hasn't been doing his job super well. So he's been given like an ultimatum, like a timeline to deliver on his job before time runs out. Otherwise he'll basically be, I think like destroyed and like melted into like, they call it the primordial, he'll be returned to the primordial ooze, which is That's crazy. So yeah, he's kind of a chill guy. He basically is like this young demon. I think he has a human form and all he wants to do is party. So he's kind of slacked on his job. But yeah, that's the premise. And I just thought the concept was really funny. I think it is meant to be a funny book as well. I don't know how I feel about humor in books because sometimes it can fall a little short and it's not actually funny. But I think I've heard this book is, so I'm kind of intrigued. As I said, it gives strong Lucifer vibes, so I'm very, very interested. But yeah, that's The Witchstone by Henry H. Neff. So the next book is called 7 Days by Alex Lake, and I just came across this book. This hits a very specific niche for me that I don't know why has always captivated me. I feel like it's along the same veins of women who are just obsessed with true crime podcasts. And like there's this whole like thing I remember like a while ago where it was like a trend I feel like on TikTok where boyfriends were like seriously concerned about their girlfriends like being obsessed with these true crime podcasts and listening to them like really casually. I feel like this is my true crime podcast. This is my version of that. And essentially it's books that kind of explore kidnappings, abductions, and like the aftermath and the psychology around it. I know that sounds super dark and like crazy, but I find it so fascinating. I've watched documentaries on like all these different stories. The movie Room, if you don't know, that's the one with Brie Larson and I forgot the name of the young guy, the young boy that plays. He's obviously really famous now, but that movie is, I don't know, it intrigues me. It's not something I'm like, oh, I love this. This is so entertaining. And like, it's not enjoyment, but it just pulls me in and it really draws me in. And maybe it's the fact that I'm a young woman and there's always been this like weird, ever-present fear about being kidnapped and abducted. It's like, I don't want it to happen to me. It's like a genuine fear, but watching movies, reading books about it, it almost is like, it removes the obscurity. It just clears it up. I think what this book is about is, we've got our main character, Maggie. So essentially the idea is she's been abducted and she's bore 2 sons. Obviously, we can imagine why and how, with this captor. But on their 3rd birthday, he comes and takes them away. So I think the idea of this book is that this is her 2nd son. His 3rd birthday is approaching and she knows he's going to be taken away. So I assume she's trying to come up with a plan or a strategy to not let that happen. Again, the rating is 4.27 stars. I am so intrigued to know why. It's like a thriller, fiction, mystery kind of thing. So the obvious hope I have for this book is that she's rescued at the end. I can only imagine the outcome of that, but yeah, that's what I'm hoping. There's something about these kinds of books. It's the psychology. It's the fear factor for me. It's like how do these women that have been through this experience, how do they cope? How do they overcome? Well, maybe they don't overcome fear, but how do they still work and operate and function in this like really crazy alien situation? Yeah. But yeah, that's a bit of a left field one.